students, how's it going? It's Mr. Lopez here in the flesh. I hope you guys are having a good first day of quarantine or self quarantine from the coronavirus. And virtually, this is an extra break that you get to have from school. But unfortunately, you guys still got to learn about economics. So, Mr. Lopez is going to let you know what you got to do in order to stay on top of things for this week. And then next week, you can enjoy your real break off, okay? But today, it's going to be pretty light. But expect another video from me tomorrow. Maybe not with my face, but with my face. I hope that I would just put my face in this video just in case you guys miss me. Because after all, I miss you guys. Come on. It's first day of coronavirus break, all right? So I just wanted to update a little bit about the Google Classroom. Many of you guys still have a little bit of catching up to do, so make sure you catch up on any of the Chapter 4 events. There will be a test that you should be expecting, except the test that I had planned out was on paper because you have to do shifts and elasticity, so I'm not sure how the heck I'm going to be doing that on Google Classroom. So I decided, maybe I'm going to wait up on that a bit unless I figure out a way how to test you guys on Chapter 4 online. But otherwise, I think it's probably safe to say we're good to move on to Chapter 5. So, therefore, what you want to do is you want to get onto McGraw-Hill and go to page 51, okay? So, if you don't know how to get there, right, when you log in, it should look something like this, right? Impact, alright, Economics, that's the name of the book, through McGraw-Hill. We go to our dashboard. We're going to go over here to Interactive Student Edition for your ebook, and it'll probably ask you if you want to go back to where you took off, and yeah, so you go there. Let's see, we're on page 51 where it says what is supply. I'm pretty much going to be briefing you through this little textbook, but you guys could also read it on your own if you want to as well. But essentially, we've learned about demand, and now it's time to learn about supply. Alright, demand, as you know, is everything that the consumer demands from a product, and that is somebody that is willing and able to purchase a product. Now we're talking about the producers, right? So these are the people that are producing the product that people are demanding. So essentially, all right, if you get an introductory into supply, supply is the amount of a product grown, produced, or acquired and offered for a sale of all possible prices that could prevail in a market, okay? And now, what that pretty much just means that supply is just pretty much products that are being supplied by a company at any given price. All right. Now, the law of supply, just like how there was a law of demand, the law of demand, remember, it stated that as prices go up, demand goes down. But for the law of supply, it's not inverse. It goes, I guess, parallel or congruent with the law. Okay, so the law of supply states that when there is the prices increase, that means the supply also increases. I see that this thing's a little bit too tiny in the screen, but it doesn't let me zoom in. But that's okay. I'm sure you guys can follow along either way on your textbooks. Either way, but pretty much the law of supply means that when the prices go up, okay. So let's say you're a producer of toilet paper, okay. Gerardo had mentioned this last week that when people demand more of a product, as if you're the person producing that product, then if more people are going to want to buy it, then maybe you can make an extra dollar by increasing the price. So if you increase the price, right, then that means you're making even more money. All right. So when we talk about the prices, what kind of prices are we talking about? So let's say you are a gas attendant, or you are a gas station owner, and you know that prices for gasoline are going to increase this next week. So you're like, you know what? Maybe when I get my shipment of petroleum from the tanker, right? I'm going to ask for just a little bit more because I know I'm going to be selling, I'm probably going to be, I want to make a lot more money from that. And it's kind of a little bit fine line, but just know that, let's say, you know that iPods are, you're a small little mom and pop telephone company, right? And so you know that the iPhone is going to be increasing in price because of, I don't know, maybe some sort of speculation that the iPhone has this brand new update that's going to make it an even better phone. So you're just like, oh man, you know what? Maybe I should increase the price of, or increase or buy more of these iPhones so I can sell them because they're going to be a lot more. I don't know, suppliers and whatnot, they kind of think of things a little bit differently. But just know, if you have the opportunity to sell a product for more money, then the suppliers, right, they want to make more money, so they're going to order more of those things. And sometimes, yes, the opposite does happen. If it, what are so that we will be talking about what happens though. When this only kind of works out when they already have that supply, because it doesn't really work out when the cost of that product increases, which we'll be getting into supply shifters. All right. With supplies, right? With the supply like demand, there is also a supply schedule. All right, which is pretty much a table that shows you any given price, right? And it tells you quantity supplied. Okay, so on this textbook, you can interact with it, and you can see that at $9, right, you have quantity supplied as 4. So this shows here that at this for this individual product, if this product was sold at $9, then this supplier is like, you know what? I want to sell 4 of them. At least I'm gonna do my best to do so. At $6, they're just like, well, you know what? I'll be selling them at 3.5, and at $4, I'll be selling 3 maybe, and then at $2, they'll be selling 2, and at $1, nothing. All right, these guys were like, what? If this is if I'm gonna be selling this cheap product, why would I sell any at all, right? And so you can see here a decrease in quantity supplied and an increase in quantity supplied. So that's a movement along the curve. Just like how in demand there is a increase in quantity demanded and decrease in quantity demanded, that is due to a change in price. So when you see a decrease in price along the supply schedule, then you see a decrease in quantity supplied. Same thing for the opposite. If you see an increase in the price in the supply schedule, then you see an increase in the supply quantity supplied, and that is shown by a movement along the demand curve or the supply curve. All right, so that right there is talking about more. We're gonna get into that in a little bit, but pretty much I just want to show you the bread and butter. So the individual supply curve would just be for one firm or one company. A market supply curve, remember, just like our market demand curve, our market supply curve would mean it's not just the supply curve for one company, it's the supply curve for all companies in that market. So you would have to add them all up. Here it kind of shows you the process in the textbook. This is the supply curve for one specific firm. This is the supply curve for another specific firm. And when you add those two things up, you have an even more stretched out supply curve. And so the concept of adding up the quantity supplied is no different than calculating the market demand curve for a demand curve or market demand curve. This is just a little interactive little story about coffees, and it tells you the prices of the market in Colombian coffee in the United States. But now let's get into our bread and butter of what I want you guys to learn today, okay? And that is the supply shifters. Supply shifters. So we already talked about change in quantity supplied, right? That was when there is a change in price in that demand or that supply schedule, right? Then we see a movement along the curve, right? And here it's just different little scenarios about all those things. You can reset this, or you can click on this to kind of see different little scenarios, right? Let's go talk about change in supply. Okay, so in this textbook they talk about different demand or supply shifters, not demand shifters. We're dealing with supply shifters now, all right, that are comparing they're comparing the event and what it does to the supply of that product. Okay, so Um, if we look over here, let's see, what we got over here? Oh, it's just showing the shift. Either way, so changes apply. We'll kind of get into that in just a bit. All right, so these are the different factors that can potentially shift a supply curve. The first one is cost of a resource, right? The next one is cost of productivity. I didn't realize I just underlined out that stuff. That's okay. I didn't know you could do that. That's pretty dang cool of our textbook to do. Anyways, there's cost of a resource. Okay, so what this is trying to say is that when you're when let's say you are a supplier, okay, and the land, labor, and capital of a specific product, right, is gonna that the prices for that thing increases. So if it costs a little bit more for you to produce the product that you're trying to sell, then you're probably not gonna produce as many of them because it's gonna become more expensive. So therefore, your supply would probably decrease. So that would be denoted by a shift of the supply curve to the left. All right. Now, before we jump into this, I don't want to. Let's kind of head over to a Google sheet. Okay. So in our Google Sheets, we'll put here our quantity supplied because I forgot to mention that this and then quantity or not or just price because for some reason, even though in the actual supply schedule you're supposed to have supply first or I mean price first, on Google Sheets they like it this way instead. So we're gonna go ahead and make this a little bit organized. We're gonna I'm gonna center these guys right here. Prices, I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How about just 5 of them? And then we're gonna make them a dollar sign because these are prices. Quantity supplied. Remember the law of supply states that when you are when pretty much as prices increase, so does supply. So let's just go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Now we're gonna highlight these two bad boys right here. We're gonna insert chart. Wait for it to pop up. Boink. Here we go. Great stuff. So here we have our prices, and then down below here we have our quantity supplied. All right. So unlike a demand curve, I should have mentioned this a little bit back, but it's okay. We're just doing a cold run with this stuff. So unlike demand, right? Demand is a downward sloping curve. Supply will always be an upward sloping curve. Always. At all times, okay? Supply is never going to be going downwards. Don't get those two mixed up, okay? Just remember, as prices increase, so will supply, okay? These guys want to make more money, okay? That price of the product that they probably already have in stock, right? They're going to be like, shoot, I'm going to want to sell more of it because that means I will make more money, all right? So this is what a supply curve is going to look like. Hopefully, you will be able to do one of these things because I will actually be asking you as your first assignment for this week is to at least graph this. You're gonna have to make a supply schedule, and supply is with 2 P's. Supply schedule. Let's go ahead and merge this bad boy, and let's center that. I like my neatness in this stuff. Okay, you gotta have your supply schedule, and then you have to have a graph, all right, or a supply curve. Okay. So I expect you to be able to graph one of these on Google Sheets. Okay. Now, I just wanted to make sure I kind of get over that. And if you need to kind of look back at the video, then you can always just go back at the video to kind of see how I did that. But just remember that I put quantity supply first and then price, because otherwise these two axes will be flipped. All right. So just just go back to the video and do that. So this would be supply curve of, I don't know, Oreos, or how about toilet paper, because maybe a lot of you guys are dealing with that kind of stuff at the moment. Who knows? All right, now supply curve of toilet paper. How about that? Good stuff. All right, so let's go over back to our supply shifters. Okay, the first one is the cost of a resource. So let's say the cost of toilet paper was going up. Okay, so it's going to become a little bit more expensive to produce toilet paper. So the cost to produce a toilet paper goes up. That's what I'm trying to say. So the land, it's either because of the land, labor, or capital, it became more expensive. So now the supplier, right? The supplier, this producer, they're just like, oh dang, you know what? It's gonna be a little bit more expensive to produce one of these things. Our productivity for producing this thing is gonna go down. All right, so that's what we see a curve, the supply curve going to the left. But same thing, it becomes a little bit cheaper. All right, so let's say a resource becomes cheaper, then you are like, wow, it's so much cheaper to produce this stuff. I should take advantage of these cheap prices to produce toilet paper. So I'm going to produce a lot more toilet papers. So therefore, you would see a supply shift to the right. Okay, we have productivity. So what's saying that when productivity increases in like for a supplier, right? Maybe your workers work a lot faster, your machines work a lot faster, or something like that. Then that would be a supply curve. The supply curve will shift to the right. If somehow, let's say, workers fail on training or they're unmotivated, unhappy, that means they would produce fewer goods. Therefore, they would the supply curve would shift to the left. We have technology. So when there is a new technology introduced into a supply, like a supply chain, then generally that will increase productivity. And that sometimes it also not only increase productivity but also lower prices. So therefore, that's going to shift the demand curve to the right. And then let's say your technology fails, then we'll go to the left. Okay. We have taxes. Okay, government taxes. Of course, if you're an employer, oh my goodness, you hate taxes. If you become a business owner, you will hate it because if you get taxed more, then you're not going to make as much money. So if the government taxes you, then you're not gonna be willing to produce more products. But if so therefore that would be the supply curve will go to the right. If the taxes go down, right? Maybe the government lets down on some taxes. That means you probably have you'll have less stress from having to pay off these taxes. You'll actually make more money because you don't have to give a portion of of your your winnings or your profit over to the government. So you want to produce even more. It's a good time to produce more products. Now subsidies. Maybe many of you guys have never been exposed to this term, but a subsidy means it's sometimes a company or the government will give you money to help you produce a product. Why? Because sometimes people need a little bit of help, so the government have subsidies to produce that. For example, with people within poorer income communities, sometimes they have a subsidized loan, which means it's a loan that the government will help you out with to pay off the interest for quite a bit until you get back up on your feet, like the USDA loan for housing in poorer income communities. But subsidy just means it's a payment to an individual, or like they'll help you with producing something. Like maybe right now, like the milk industry, how the dairy industry is kind of going downhill, and maybe the farmers are not making as much money. The USDA, the government can be like, well, you know what? Here's some money to help you guys stay on track. And so, pretty much, when the government gives a company a subsidy, right, then generally the productivity would go up, or the supply will go up. Therefore, there'll be a supply shift to the right. But sometimes when subsidies are repealed, that means that you will the government will take away a subsidy from a company, right? Then the production cost will go up, right, and productivity will go down. So they will produce less at each possible price. Therefore, the supply shift will to the left. Government regulations. So that's kind of like subsidies as well. So the government, let's say they put a regulation that you have to, I don't know, like Chipotle employees have to wash their hands every 10 minutes. Well, that every 10 minutes means that they spend less time at the counter or making food, so therefore their productivity goes down, which means their costs sometimes they go up, so therefore the supply shift will go to the left. So generally this means that when government regulates more, all right, they put in more regulations, the productivity goes down, prices the prices of the product will go down, so therefore the supply shift will to the left. When the government lets off on regulation, so they let a company do a lot more of what they need to do to get things done, productivity go up, therefore its supply shift to the right. Number of sellers, just like a number of consumers, number of sellers. So let's say you're a producer, and there's more stores, like more Walmarts or more phone stores that are able to sell your product. Well, the more of them that you have, then you're gonna have to supply more of these products over to all those companies, all those firms. So therefore, if there's more number of sellers, then your supply curve will shift to the right. If there's less of them, maybe some of them fail or they go out of business, then they will go to the left. And then the last one, all right, is expectations. So this can be many different things. It could be you're expecting, maybe a supplier is expecting the price of a resource or of land, labor, capital to go down. Then that means they will supply more. Or maybe they'll be expecting that the prices of their product, of the finished product, is going to go down, which means they're going to want to supply less. But it could also be many different things. Maybe they're thinking that the stock market or the technology of a specific product is gonna go downhill. So that will also make them want to supply less. There's endless different possibilities of expectations that that the supplier might have for the product that will go either shift to the right or shift to the left. Okay, so if I will give you an assignment, right, that will be based on Google Slides or Google Sheets that will ask you these kind of questions. So this is kind of an example. Right over here, you see the supply curve shifting to the right. I know it might be a little bit tough to see, and then we have the supply curve shifting to the left over here. All right, so that is denoted. You can see over here, you have your dollar sign for prices, your quantity down here, your first supply curve, and then supply curve 2, and with the shift. So if we look over here at cost of resources, land, labor, capital. That means, so if your cost of resources increases, right, it becomes more expensive for you to produce your product. So therefore, your supply curve, right, you're probably going to be less willing to produce a product at a given price because it became more expensive to produce it. So because of that, your supply curve is going to go to the left. Okay. Now, if your cost of resources decreases, then that means you're gonna be more willing to produce more products at every given price. So therefore, your supply curve is gonna shift to the right, just like in this one right here. Productivity. So your workers' productivity increases. That means it's gonna go to the right. Your productivity decreases. It's gonna go to the left. All right. So what I pretty much will ask you to do is just to denote whether it's going left or right, and then generally make a little mock um, supply curve shift. That way I can see that you know the direction in which it's going. Technology improves. That of course is going to be to the right. That means your technology, you're able to produce more products, so therefore supply goes over to the right. Technology fails. That means your supply curve is going to go to the left. All right. Let's say you have a brand new machine and it goes through an update and it doesn't work the same anymore, so it would go to the left. All right. Taxes. Okay. The government increases taxes on a company. Therefore, the company's not going to want to produce as much, so the supply curve will shift to the left. And then if taxes decrease, that means the company gets to produce way more without having to pay the government. So therefore, the taxes, right, the decreasing taxes are going to cause the supply curve to shift to the right. Now, our subsidies. So when a company receives subsidies from the government, so that means they receive some sort of support, financial support, then that means their costs are going to go down because they're not spending as much cost. So that's essentially the same as thinking of it as their cost, right, has decreased. So what happens when their cost decreases? Their supply curve is going to shift to the right, just like this one. Now, let's say the government says, you know what, we've gone through a new administration, there's a new president, and the president decided to pull all subsidies towards that company. So therefore, your supply curve is going to go to the left because it became more expensive again to produce all your products. All right. And by the way, the reason why schools or colleges are free or more expensive, because it really depends how much money they get from the government. So you can kind of think of this as you might expect a question on this about colleges and how much money they receive and how expensive their tuition is, because the more subsidies that a college receives, generally their tuition price or the cost to go to the school there decreases. and so more students, or they would want more students to go to that college because they're making a lot more money. Um, Government regulations. The government increases regulations. That's not going to make you want to produce as much. That's a pain in the neck. So your demand curve or your supply curve is going to shift to the left. Your government regulations increases. Heck yeah, let's go ahead and do what we want and produce a lot more. What we have to do, don't have to follow OSHA rules or different things like that. But productivity would increase. All right, there's less rules for you to follow. Number of sellers. Okay, so there are more firms that enter the market. That means you're going to have a supply shift to the right. Firms exit the market. You're going to have a supply shift to the left. And then lastly, if the company has a positive expectation about what's going to go on with their market, then that means their supply curve should shift to the right. And then a negative expectation would conclude to a negative shift to the left. All right, just like that. All right, we're gonna leave it off at that for today. I'm not sure how long I've been talking for, but I know you guys really can only handle not too much talking in a specific day, especially about economics. Making sure I also give you guys time to work on your other classes. But just expect, students, you're gonna be expecting a quiz or test on on chapter 4. If I figure out how to do a really good way to do this on the internet. If not, then expect us when we come back from this long break. Who knows whenever we'll come back. So we'll just jump right into chapter 5. So on chapter 5, when you go, let's go all the way up to page 51 on what is supplied. You guys could also go through a read through if this video kind of confused you. Hopefully this video did help you out a little bit, but we're only ending all the way down to the end of supply. So we'll end at expectations. Then you'll see over here we get to elasticity of supply. I think that's a good topic to cover for another day, but it's very similar to pretty much to this elasticity of demand. All right, but I think I'm gonna bore you guys out, and I think that's gonna be saved for another time. Okay, so here we go. All right, coronavirus mania out here in Carpinteria. I hope you guys have a good time. Wait a minute. Holy cow. I didn't even realize my face was gone. When did this happen? Alright, people. I hope you didn't miss my face. Maybe you'll see me around. Maybe you won't. Alright, but please stay indoors. Stay safe. Drink plenty of water. Don't use up all the toilet paper. And, yes. That's it. Alright? Have a good time. Expect more assignments on Google Classroom, but not too many of them. I'm not going to overwork you guys. You guys should enjoy this break. See ya.